Welcome to Diaspora, the show where we share the remarkable stories of immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. I'm your host, Aditya Mehta. Each week, we sit down with individuals who have made the journey over and explore their experiences, their challenges, their triumphs. We delve into their unique perspectives on adapting to a new culture while staying connected to their roots. Today, we are joined by Priyanka Desai, an award winning broadcast journalist turned TV producer. Born and raised in Bombay, she moved to Canada a few years ago. She's produced several shows for the likes of Telus Originals and Story Hive. You may know her from her directorial debut, an Indo-Canadian docu-series called Not Your Butter Chicken, which is streaming online and will soon be launched on CBC Gem. Last but not the least, she has founded Jugaad Sisters, an all women of color owned production company. I know Priyanka from Diasporaa, the new immigrant platform I used to run in Vancouver. I don't think we've ever met in person, but we've kept in touch over about 5 years or so. So with that, let's dive into this week's conversation. Priyanka, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. And I don't think we've met in person before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
but we've talked over the phone so much. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So my first question to you, is it Bombay or is it Mumbai?
It's Bombay for me and for those who are taking a stand against the extremely polarizing local political party who initiated the
Right.
name change movement in Mumbai. But for all those people who are not born and raised with that background information or
Yeah.
that political stand, I
Yeah.
encourage people to say Mumbai.
Yeah.
So when I say, where am I born and raised?
Yeah.
I say, I'm born and raised in Mumbai. I say
Yeah.
Mumbai. You should say
Yeah.
Mumbai because legally the name is Mumbai.
Yeah.
But I call it Bombay because I'm taking a stand against the local
Yeah.
political party.
I
You
say
don't have to take it. So all
yeah.
the white people here don't have that reference. So they should just call it Mumbai.
So I was born in Bombay, but I grew up in Mumbai because by the time I was growing up, it was called Mumbai. But I
Yeah.
think generally when I speak in Marathi, I always say Mumbai, but otherwise I call it Bombay. What does the word Jugaad mean in your company's name? I don't think we've come up on this word on the show yet. So you can be the first one to explain to our audience what that word means.
Well, Jugaad is a word derived from Hindi language. Hindi, Marathi, I think it's just general Indian
Yeah.
language word. It means an unconventional way of getting something done.
Yeah.
So in Hindi we say सीधी उंगली से घी ना निकले तो उंगली
Yeah.
टेढ़ी करनी पड़ती है.
Yeah.
So you
So
can
if this
explain the translation.
if the straight approach doesn't work, you have to use an unconventional approach.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's exactly what Jugaad is. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of the work that I do needs unconventional solutions to
Sure.
get things done.
Yeah.
So that's why Jugaad.
Yeah, it's used as mostly like a noun, like, you do jugaad, but
Yeah.
sometimes you get asked, do you have a jugaad, like a connection or like something that can solve this problem for
Yeah,
me?
it's
So
such a cool word, actually. I like
it,
using it. Don't you like it too? Like,
when I speak Hindi with North Indians, I use that word more than when I speak, like Bombay Hindi. So
okay.
as the audience changes, my Hindi changes, my English changes, my accent changes. Yeah, I've been told it's a sign of intelligence. So I'll
Wow.
take that. Your last name is Desai and you're Maharashtrian. I'm Gujarati. My mom's Gujarati. Her last name is Desai from like her maiden name. So it's one of the, there's a lot of these last names which are seen in multiple states of the country. Do you have the background of how your last name came about?
As we know that in Indian subcontinent, majorly in India, a lot of the last names are derived from the professions our
Yeah.
ancestors had, right?
Yeah.
Or the place they came from.
Yeah.
So, but Desai and Sar Desai are two last names that I know of. I don't know any other, probably there are many others, but they don't come from the profession that we did
Right.
or the place that we
Yeah.
came from or our ancestors came from. So it was an honor that was given to one of my ancestors who probably did something really cool. So that's how Desai came about. So
Yeah.
that's why you'll find Desais in Hindus, Muslims. There are
Really?
some Sikh Desais as well I've
Wow.
come across. So yeah, it's an honor. It's not.
Okay.
It
Very
doesn't tell
cool.
what my ancestors did. which is
Yeah.
actually a great thing coming from India.
My last name means accountant. It's an occupational
Ah,
last name, Mehta. Every
nice.
village would have a Mehta ji who would be the bookkeeper of the village.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were born and brought up in Mumbai. What part of the city are you from?
Dadar Shivaji Park as
Oh,
Marathi.
as Marathi.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, for our listeners, you've heard me mention Sachin Tendulkar before, the greatest cricket player ever. He trained in Shivaji Park in Dadar, which is almost like a mecca of cricket. A lot of great players have come from there. And Dadar is a predominantly Maharashtrian, like Marathi speaking neighborhood in Bombay, quite densely populated, crowded, and it's also where the two train lines meet. So it's a very busy train station. How were your days growing up in Mumbai? How was your early years in your career? Let's talk about that.
Dadar Shivaji Park is like a very, I would say it's a cultural heartland of Mumbai in a way. There's
Yeah,
so much literature, theater around you that it's hard to not be influenced by these things. So
yeah,
I think growing up, I had like amazing neighbors who brought me to plays and films. And yeah, I think it was a really rich childhood growing up because I was just so surrounded by so many people who were not just my family, but outside of family,
yeah,
who were in a way trying to parent me in different ways. So, yeah, my growing up in Dadar was like that. There was a lot of athletics around, though I'm not an athletic kid at
yeah.
all. Like my elder sister, I always tell the story that my elder sister was a state level gymnast, and
Mm-hmm.
she was so proud to bring me along to this really famous open air gymnasium in Shivaji Park, which, by the way, also trained Salman Khan around the same time when he was doing his first film, Maine Pyar Kiya.
Yeah,
So we used to see him bike from Bandra to the other Shivaji Park just
yeah,
to train at this gymnasium.
yeah.
So I went to the same gymnasium, but I failed twice. So I was not a
Right.
athletic kid at all. But
For
yes,
our listeners, Salman Khan is a popular Bollywood actor, very famous, big fan following.
yeah,
Okay, what did
notorious
you?
yet famous actor. Yes.
Yeah, what was your first job in Bombay once you finished your studies?
What was my first job? Yeah, my first actual job was while I was still in college. So
Mm-hmm.
I had gotten a phone call from my teachers. I was studying journalism at the time, and her ex-husband, who is still this really amazing big documentary filmmaker, he was filming in Sangli, which is like a really small town, an overnight train away from Mumbai, and he needed help with speaking Marathi locally because it's a
Sure.
predominantly Marathi speaking town in
Yeah,
Maharashtra. And she called me and she said, "Do you want to go?" And
yeah.
I said, I didn't even know where Sangli was at the time. And I said,
Right.
I'll go.
Yeah.
And I hung up and I told my mom that I'm going tonight to Sangli. And this is like a really simple middle class household in Mumbai. We lived in an apartment with our grandparents. So we're really like a close knit family, but also being the youngest child, I was like kind of a rebel. So
Yeah.
I said, I'm going.
Yeah.
And I left that night to assist this filmmaker who had never met. And it's
Right.
so stupid. I wouldn't recommend anyone to do that
Right.
anymore. But it was one of my most amazing jobs because that opened so many doors for me
Yeah.
personally and opened mine to this beautiful field of filmmaking. So
Yeah.
that was kind of my first job. But my technical first job was just after I passed out college. I was a reporter with Hindustan Times, which is
Right.
a national
Yep.
newspaper in India. And they
Yep.
were just opening up their Mumbai edition. And I was
Yeah.
one of the teams that launched the paper in Mumbai.
Wow. Yeah, I distinctly remember when that paper launched in Mumbai because I hadn't even heard of the newspaper until I went to Delhi to be interviewed by someone from the Bhartiya family when I was applying to Dartmouth for my undergrad. So
Uh-huh.
they're a Dartmouth alum and he interviewed me. So I had gone to Delhi for a day and that's how I even knew that such a newspaper exists. But that's
Yeah.
pretty cool being part of the launch of a big newspaper. How many years did you work before deciding to move to Canada?
I think I worked. Wow, that's a great question. Probably here, I think 18 years or 17 years I
Oh,
worked
wow.
because I was working since I was in college. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have like a long, not that I'm too young anymore, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
that I've been working for a long time.
And what brought about the move?
I don't have a dramatic story to tell for this
Sure.
move. Honestly, it's such a boring story. I just wanted to see if I survive in another country
Yeah.
that's not the country I was born and raised in. So
Yeah.
I wanted to see how I survive.
Yeah.
Sounds
I
like I
mean,
did.
no, yeah, you definitely did. And that's a pretty good reason to move. I moved for quality of life. So it's a unconventional reason in particular. Were those days when the crazy immigration rush had already started? Because I applied in 2017. My PR was very quick.
Yeah, I did apply in 2017 as well. I think we both immigrated at the same time. And
Yeah.
honestly, I wasn't so keen about immigration because I had a great life in Mumbai. I mean, as great
Yeah.
as it can be for a middle class person. But I was in media, I was doing a TV job. I had my own business, like it was like a event space. So yeah, I was doing pretty good. One thing I would tell that my immigration process was really fast. Or probably it felt fast because I wasn't paying too much attention to it.
Sure.
So I kind of applied and I said, let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
We'll figure this out. I was also married at the time. So we
Yeah.
applied as a couple with me as the primary applicant. And yeah, we just wanted to see where it goes. Also,
Yeah.
I was very sure that I don't want to raise my kids in India because at that time the political environment was changed so much. I had
Yeah.
quit news television because of the current government who had come on at the time. Those were the early days, and there was no way you could do true journalism. And that's why I was kind of tired and I wanted
Sure.
to just move. So
Sure. Now that makes sense. So, did you always know you were going to be on the West Coast, or did you consider, or was it even an intentional decision?
it was intentional for two reasons. A, because I wanted to be in the warmest city in Canada,
Yeah.
because you know it. We
Yeah.
both come
Same.
from, Bombay
That was
is
the
super
exact
hot.
reason. Yeah. I
Yeah.
moved for the exact same reason. I chose
Yeah,
Vancouver.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there were two things. I looked it up. Are there snakes in Canada? And are there mosquitoes in Canada?
Yeah.
This is like super random, but I did look that up. But I also wanted to be on the West Coast because my sister lives in California. So I thought maybe
Okay.
I'll have someone in the same time zone.
Same time zone. Yeah.
So
Another very interesting reason I've heard for moving to Vancouver, one of my previous guests, he said he chose between Vancouver and London, England, because it rains a lot in London. So I was like, you clearly didn't check the weather before you moved. Okay, so you decided to move to Vancouver directly, because I would presume that, is there a film industry, like large one in Toronto at all? Or is it very
yeah,
down the
I
coast?
mean, I would say Toronto is a far bigger film and television industry than Vancouver for sure,
Yeah.
because Vancouver does a lot of gets a lot of service work. So
Yeah.
we service a lot of Hollywood projects here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, West Coast has a brilliant documentary industry where I work in.
Yeah.
So I would say it's not as big as Toronto, but
Yeah.
it's small and mighty.
Okay. Did you like Did you just move cold turkey, like not having anything in hand here? And this was
Yeah.
what, 2018, 2019 ish?
2018, yeah, 2018. I moved with no plan. Honestly, having worked in television for like 17, 18 years, I was like, you know what? I'll do something else. I won't do
Yeah.
media. I'll figure out and do something else in another industry. That
Yeah.
was my idea when I moved. And I figured that I don't know anything else. This is
Right.
all I know,
Right.
making films, telling stories, and somehow my path came back to that.
Yeah. What was your first job in Canada of any
Uh,
kind?
my first job in Canada was Tim Hortons,
Okay.
actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I applied to Tim Hortons because I wanted to see how people talk and I
Yeah.
wanted to see how
Yeah.
do people order coffee. I know a lot of the people, wait and kind of wait for 2 3 months, keep applying
Yeah.
for the jobs and see how it is. but I
Yeah.
wanted to jump right into it because that's kind of my personality. And I said, okay, what's the first job that I can get? So I got Tim
Yeah.
Hortons. I said, I want, when I was interviewing for that, and it was super odd. And because my friends were like, oh, you don't have to do the job. You know how
Yeah.
Indians think? And I said, no, I want to do it because I want to learn how people talk and I want to see, I want to observe people.
Yeah.
And I told the person who was interviewing, I said, whatever you do, put me in front of client, interaction.
Yeah.
So I want to be at the tell, which
Yeah.
I sucked at tell. I was really bad at it.
Yeah.
Don't give me money at all. And I don't like, there was this one guy who said, give me a loony. And I didn't know what a loony was.
Sure. All had that incident.
So those crazy moments. But at the same time, I learned a lot of how people dress, how people talk, what do people do, and the whole idea of going to downtown every day and then doing other things after my job, volunteering and all of that kind of helped a lot, I think.
I think you came in with the right mindset. I feel a lot of people, they do the survival job very grudgingly, but you turned it into like a learning experience and a way to acclimatize and assimilate with the country. And that's very good because most people, and I've talked about this on the show, they will land in Indian neighborhood like Surrey or Brampton, and then they're only surrounded by people who have a shared experience, and that becomes their version of Canada. And I always advocate people, you should live in downtown. If it's too expensive, find a way how you will afford it, but it really changes your entire Canada experience when you move it for any country. But with the US, most people come here to study first, and they're in that ecosystem from day one, which is welcoming. But that's not happening in Canada. We showed up with our 6 suitcases and no plans, and we knew one person in the whole country, and he was like brother of one of the friends of my wife. So it not exactly a close connection either, right? So I really like that you took that approach and didn't take it as like something down, because in India the dignity of labor doesn't really exist. Whereas here it does exist. People will not talk down to you if you work in a Tim Hortons. And that's one thing I was lucky to learn when I was in undergrad in college itself, right? So on that note, let's take a break. And when we return, we'll continue talking about Priyanka's early days in Vancouver. We'll be right back after these messages.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Are you ready to discover remarkable stories of resilience and cultural connection? This is Diasporaa, a show sharing the journeys of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent now building their lives in North America. Inspiring, insightful, and always engaging, Diasporaa offers a unique perspective on the immigrant experience. Join me, Aditya Mehta, my guests, on the Diasporaa show every Wednesday at 2 p.m. right here on KKNW.
Find out the latest about your favorite shows on Alternative Talk 1150. Check out 1150kknw.com.
Welcome back to Diaspora on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. We're talking to Priyanka Desai, a film producer and director based in Vancouver, BC. Before we get back to talking to Priyanka, I want to take a moment to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find all our episodes in video form over there, right from the first episode. So, Priyanka, what were your first impressions of Vancouver as a city when you landed?
It's beautiful. I landed and straight went to Surrey, as everyone does, because I had a very close friend who lived in Surrey who was so kind and generous to not just welcome me in her home, but in her social space, in her family. So grateful for that. So I remember this day when she picked me up from the airport. The stark difference was there were 36 people who came to drop me off at the airport in Mumbai. And I have a selfie with all of them. And then my friend Rochita here who came to pick me up, and she's like, there are not 36 people, but I'm here,
Yeah.
So that was a really warm welcome that I got in
Yeah.
Vancouver. And my first impression was I talked to her over the phone while I was still trying to get out of the airport. And I said, is this some kind of a holiday today? And she said, no. Why?
Nobody's.
So why is there no one at the airport?
Yeah.
And she's like, it's all going to be like this,
Yeah.
welcome to Canada.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, cool. So I got out and it was a beautiful sunny day. We took a picture of my feet because she asked me to take a picture of my feet as I've landed here in
as
Canada.
set first foot in.
So, first foot in Canada.
Yeah.
It's so hilarious now that I think of it, but I'm glad that she made me do it. You know, it's one of those silly things that you do, but you kind of it becomes a sweet memory. So that's what it is. What was your first picture in
So I had been to Vancouver once in 2006. So I had some vague memories of, spending a night there. I don't even know where we stayed, and we took the cruise up to Alaska, but my wife had never been to Canada at all. And because I had lived in the US for 4 years in my undergrad before going back to India, then coming to Canada, I was kind of familiar with this part of the world and how things are, like driving on the right side of the road, or just the way people speak, the small talk. So it wasn't much of a shock, but we stayed in Richmond in a hotel for 2 or 3 days because I was very confident we'll find a place to stay right away, which we did. The next day we went to this mall called Aberdeen Mall in Richmond. And everything was in Chinese, like Mandarin or Cantonese. And my wife's like, I thought we're coming to Canada. And because the food court had like 9 Chinese restaurants and 1 Japanese restaurant. So I said, no, I'm sure this is just like a ethnic neighborhood or whatever. The next day we go to Surrey and everything is in Punjabi. And my wife's like, again, I thought you were bringing me to Canada. So where is Canada? And so it took us a few days to figure out what's where. But yeah, like you, I felt it was such a beautiful place. I opened up the curtains of my hotel room and I saw the North Shore Mountains with some snow and the blue sky that you can only see in Kashmir. And I was like, man, I'm in the right place. So
I remember feeling this, and I still feel that, sometimes you kind of remove yourself mentally from the reality. Like sometimes when you're walking, I tend to zoom out and just see myself in this space, just like mentally see myself. And then I say to myself that probably I did something good. If there is such a thing like karma, I did something good that I'm able to live and experience BC or these.
My wife found the pace of life very slow. She likes the Bombay pace. I was a bit tired of the Bombay pace. I used to commute 3 hours a day, traffic. I was exposed to the worst that Bombay has to offer and the noise and the chaos. So I was very happy to be here, but my wife definitely missed the 30 people dropping you off and the big family. Because for us, with our combined 8 grandparents, all 8 sets of the family are in Bombay. So we have been there for 4 generations. You throw a stone, you'll find someone that is part of our family. Yeah, like literally. So that was our first impression. Yeah. And you said you worked at Tim Hortons. What was your first job in the media space and how did you manage to get that job?
I used to go, there was this, I don't know if it still exists, but there was this networking event, film networking event, where you got to pay $10 as an entry fee. And then you get to network with other filmmakers.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't know how and where, probably I was just part of some Facebook group or something like that at the time. And I got to know about this event that's happening. And I went there and I said, and over there, people who are offering jobs can go up on stage and say, hey, I'm looking for this particular crew, So they could just say it on the stage. And people who are looking for a work can also do the same. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember doing that. Like I did go up on stage and talk about myself, which was so terrifying. Like it was still terrifying because I've been for a long time of my life, I've been in front of camera on television, and still doing that in a completely new country was just so terrifying to me. But also I always tell this to people that there is such a kind of a bliss in anonymity. No one knew me there. So you can just do whatever and be whatever there. I could just go there and say, I'm Miss India, okay. Anyways,
Yeah.
but I did not do that. I did ask for work.
Yeah.
And there was this one person who said, I'm crewing up for my next feature film and I'm looking for an assistant director. And I had never done assistant director work, but I said, how difficult can it be?
Right.
I knew what assistant director does. It's basically running the set and making sure everything is happening on time and all of that. And I'm like, I'm a producer. I can totally do that. So I reached out to that person at that networking event and I said, I would like to apply for your assistant director work. And he said, sure, send me a resume. And I immediately sent him a resume right at the networking event
Yeah.
because I had it ready, of
Yeah.
course. And then he hired me. And that was my first job. I still have that check that he gave me because he gave me a physical check of $1,000.
Nice.
So that was my first media or film job
Yeah.
that I got.
Great. Is there an issue with, do you have Canada experience that many other jobs tend to have?
Yes, I think it's a lot because I have so many executive producer credits from India because I worked for Star TV and, other shows. But here, they don't have that recognition. I think it's changing now. In the past 2-3 years, I see that there is a shift in at least respecting your past experience.
Sure.
But we are still few steps away, I think many steps away from recognizing that past experience.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, understood. Because I would figure your skills are more transferable than, say, someone who was in marketing or, like a random profession, right?
yeah, you would think so. I mean, there are some, I would say yes and no, because filmmaking or producing television is so ingrained in the local the cultural references
Yeah.
that what works as a story to the audiences here is so different than what works as a story for audiences in India, right?
Got it.
So I would say that yes and no. Yes, a lot of my skills are transferable. Like I know how to tell a story, right? So that I can do, that's a transferable skill. But what kind of story do I want to tell is a learning curve
Okay.
because that is so local, that is so ingrained in the local cultural fabric of this society.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. I would suppose there would be a lot of American influence as well, given that so many of the US shows and movies are produced in Vancouver.
Yes, but I think Canadian filmmaking has its own beautiful style and pace,
Okay.
which is so different than American storytelling. I would say that there are technical influences, like the technical aspect of it, but I think storytelling as a Canadian filmmaker, I think has a very nuanced and interesting, distinct identity. Yeah, it's not very similar to American
Very interesting.
film.
I would not have even caught that in observation if I compared content. What was your first, like, what you would call major production that you were a part of in a substantial way?
I was hired, actually, my first big step into what I'm doing now was through this company called Black Rhino Creative. I'm so grateful for Ryan and Danny who were able to bring me on board for their food and travel show that they were producing and directing at the time. It's called Red Chef Revival. It was my first show in Canada that was exactly in line with what I did in India.
Okay.
And I remember I got that job in July. Yeah, 3rd July was my first day at that job in 2018. So 4 months after I moved, I was
Yeah.
like,
What
I was able
date?
to land something.
What date in April did you land?
Oh, I landed in March,
Okay.
March
Because
15th.
we
Yeah.
landed on 20th April.
No, I landed on March 15th.
Okay.
So
Just
yeah,
about a month before. So that's pretty
yeah,
same time.
yeah.
You were talking about the film network. I didn't find any like network that made sense for me, so I just created my own, which is Diaspora. So
Yeah, I can't even keep up, Aditya, with the things that you've been doing since the time I have known you. It's
yeah,
been like 6 years now that
yeah,
we know each other,
yeah,
but I can't keep up with the things. I'm like, what are you now up to?
yeah.
So
So now I'm, not just the Diaspora podcast, but I'm part of a network of podcasts called Staying Power. There's multiple shows in there, and it's like a podcast incubator of sorts.
that's so nice.
Yeah, so that's what my latest project is, apart from the property management company that I run. But yeah, since then, since I met you, I've sold a business, I've shut down a business, I've started a business, I worked for Amazon, and then started another business, and now this podcast network. So
That's
a lot of
amazing.
a lot of stuff. We can't sit still. I think that's
Yeah,
our
yeah,
problem,
that's
my
true.
wife and I. So yeah, where can someone find the Red Chef Revival? Is it on YouTube or is it on
It's
a?
on YouTube still. I'm not too
Okay,
sure, but it must
okay.
be on YouTube. Yeah.
I will look it up and add a link in the show notes for
Sure.
the audience. And how old is the Jugad sisters?
It's not very old, probably less than 2 years now.
Okay.
But yeah, I think when I moved, I did struggle with telling people what I knew and what I could do in this industry. So I wanted to create a space, and I'm still like, it's such a new company still. And my dream is to make like a Jugaad Sisters collective
Mm-hmm.
where it's a space for new immigrants, or basically mostly women of color, to have this space to have their first opportunity to experience the Canadian industry, to experience Canadian film and television,
Yeah.
and work in film and television. So whenever I have a project, I like to bring on first generation immigrant women of color
Yeah.
on board to be part of my crew. So that's
Yeah.
something that I'm very clear about, because that's why I think I had to hustle to create those opportunities for
Yeah.
me, and
Yeah.
I think I owe it to all the opportunities that were given to me, that I can create those, paying it forward, right? Like, I
Yeah.
want to create those
Absolutely.
similar opportunities in whatever capacity I can
Yeah.
to other women who are coming after me. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much what Diaspora was all about. I noticed how if you're coming in cold from India, you have no idea about anything in Canada, how the credit score works, where do I get my SIN number, how do I write my resume.
yeah.
So that's where the whole thought came from, that it's COVID, I'm locked down, my family's stuck in India, I have probably few months with nothing going on, I'm laid off. So why not turn that into an opportunity? And that's how Diaspora came about originally. How did you come across Diaspora?
How did I come across Diaspora? I do not have any memory of that, but I don't know. I think I used to run this. I used
Community
to run
tree?
this little. Yeah, it was like an immigrant group as well. It was called Community Tree. It wasn't founded by me,
Yeah.
but I became like a big part of it over the
Yeah.
period, over pandemic, and probably it's through that I came across Diaspora.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had attended some of the meetings for the community tree.
Oh, you
And
did? Okay.
yeah, one of the web calls, and they were talking about doing like an event coming up soon. And I was like, I do 2 events every week, guys. Like, let's buck up a little bit because I ended up doing more than 150 meetups for Diaspora
Wow.
by the time I
Wow.
moved to Seattle.
Yeah.
I don't think you came for any of the events though. Like, otherwise, I would have met you because I was at every single
I
one of
don't
them.
think so. No,
Yeah.
no, no.
Yeah. Apart from your friend who picked you up at the airport, where did you find your other close friends that you have in Canada today? Like, what were the avenues where you came across those people?
A lot of my friends are, I'm very good with networking, and I'm very good with, I really like to make deep, meaningful connections, because otherwise I don't want to keep in touch.
Yeah.
So a lot of my friends are from my work, from the industry that I'm in. But my closest friend here, actually, I have like, so one of my closest friend here came through one of your WhatsApp groups.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's that. And my other super closest friend is through my film work here. So
Who's the
most
friend from the WhatsApp group? I may know that
Sunny,
person.
yeah, you may know him. Yes.
Yeah. I
Sunny Upadhyay.
Yeah, I think the name sounds familiar. In those early days, I would make it a point to talk to 10 members every single day from the group. So when somebody gets added on, just reach out and say, hi, I'm admin. This is the grader mission, and I'd love to see you at one of the meetups. So, oh, that's great. I do feel it has really added value in people's lives and helped people out significantly. And hopefully, I'm collecting some positive karma on the way.
I'm
So-
sure you are. Not hopefully. I'm sure you have already.
Yeah, thank you. So, I want to talk about not your butter chicken, but I think it's time to go into a break. So, when we return, that's what we're going to talk about, as well as advice that you may have for other new immigrants interested in the media space. So, we'll be right back after these messages.
I'm Chris Jakomick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakomick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide. My service never stops.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Chris Erdman. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creative minds, and game changers to uncover the real stories behind their business. On my show, Made of More, we explore the challenges that they've overcome, the breakthroughs that they've celebrated, and the mindset that drives them forward. If you're ready to unlock your full entrepreneurial potential, Made of More is the show for you, because here we know you are made of more. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW.
Seattle, Tacoma, Antwerp? That's right. We're streamed worldwide on our app and on the web at 1150kknw.com.
Welcome back to Diaspora on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first-generation immigrants from South Asia. We're talking to Priyanka Desai, and as in Hindi we would say Jaane Mane film director or producer, which translates
Not
loosely.
so Jaane Mane yet. Okay.
Jaane Mane is known and recognized film director and producer. So, but before we jump back into the conversation, if you like listening to our show and this episode, please consider following us on Instagram or leaving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Were there any lows during the journey from the time you landed to now where you questioned, like, what am I doing? Why am I even here? Especially
No,
like
there
from the
were no
career.
lows.
Okay. That's
No, I'm
good.
just kidding. Of course, there were
Yeah.
lows. I mean, it's an ebb and flow, right? Yeah, there were lots of lows where I thought that, oh my God, what am I doing? But I never questioned, why am I here? I think I have questioned, what am I doing sometimes? But I never questioned the fact, why am I here? Yeah, I have had many lows. Also, like, I went through a lot of like personal lows because of my divorce, being away from the country. Big lows because my ex knew how to cook and I didn't. So
Oh.
I had to learn after
Yeah.
being divorced. Like, I learned how to cook. So I don't know what else. Like, I feel like there were a lot of lows in terms of getting myself the work that I want to do, or the work that I deserve to do,
Yeah.
but not doing that yet because I'm new
Yeah.
here. So those were, I would say, as low points,
Yeah.
which are very frustrating, as so many immigrants can feel. I think, yeah, those were my lows. That and it conditions your brain in a way, right? Like, I remember that I was applying for this work. It was a travel and food show, and they wanted someone in Victoria. And that's when I moved to Victoria, right?
Yeah.
And there were 2 job opportunities. One was a production manager job opportunity, and one was a production coordinator job opportunity. And because of my experience here till then in Canada, I thought, even though I qualify for more than a production manager, I applied for production coordinator work because I thought that they are not going to hire me anyways for production manager role. And it's so interesting that when I applied for that, the person who was hiring emailed me back saying, I think you should apply for manager role because your experience is far more
Yeah.
than being a production coordinator.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. If she had not done that, I would be doing production coordinator role,
Yeah.
because the other experiences in a way condition you to sell yourself short.
Yeah.
Right. So I think those were the lows that I've experienced, but I also experienced highs like these, where the person recognized my talent and said, no, you
Yeah.
apply for this role. And I
Yeah.
got it,
Yeah.
as you know. So, yeah.
Yeah. Nice. So let's talk about Not Your Butter Chicken. Tell me all about it, how the idea came to be, what your role was, how you developed the show, the shooting of the show, and then all the way to the kind of public response to the show.
I was working on another show at the time, and this was called House Special. It was about Chinese Canadian stories told through food and travel. And I was working with a producer at the time who was also producing the show, Joanna Wong, and we were both, working on stories and production and whatnot. And
Yeah.
this was for the same company, Black Rhino Creative. The broadcasters reached out to me saying, hey, Priyanka, and I was doing like some other projects which were funded by the same broadcaster. And they reached out saying, hey, Priyanka, we want to work with you directly. Do you have anything that you would like to share? Are you working on a show? And of course, I jumped on that opportunity. I partnered with the producer that I was working with on House Special, Joanna Wong. And I said, okay, let's put this together. So the show was called something else before it became Not Your Butter Chicken. And then I put together the show, and I really wanted to make a show that puts South Asians, Indians in a light that is beyond the food or beyond butter chicken. So
Yeah.
that's where the idea came from.
Yeah.
I really wanted it to be like, it was just my way of saying we are more than our food.
Yes.
We are more than butter chicken. Like,
Yeah.
I've always talked about this in all my interviews for Not Your Butter Chicken, is like, how is the entire subcontinent's lived experience, history,
Yeah.
culture is reduced to this one little greasy dish, butter
Yeah.
chicken.
Right.
And that's exactly what I wanted to challenge.
Yeah.
And that's how Not Your Butter Chicken came about.
Yeah, so I'll pause you here. I do talk about this on my show a lot, that there's, India is a bunch of different countries rolled into one, and each state is like a country and has 80, 100 million people. It has its own food, language, culture, dressing, movies, and temperaments. And in the US, most people think that, the typically Indian food, what you get here is North Indian food. And to some extent, in like West Coast or tech hubs, people know South Indian food. But that's it. And in Canada, I found it to be even worse, where a lot of people I met didn't know that all Indians don't speak Punjabi, because the diaspora is very, homogenous in that sense until recently. Whereas here, you've always had the 4 South Indian states, you have had Gujaratis, you have had Punjabis, you have had Marathis. So I found that in Canada, a lot of people didn't really know that there's more than one type of Indian, and therefore more than one type of Indian food and whatnot. But with all these immigrants coming, I see a lot more diversity in the type of food that we also get in Vancouver. And, people would go to Surrey and eat North Indian food, but now you can get momos, and you can, I don't know if you know Geeta's Vada Pav.
Yeah.
It's famous, right? And I've seen her, I don't know her, but I've seen her start like from a home kitchen, and now she has a store. And I love the fact that you're not only addressing that it's not just butter chicken, but like also not beyond the food, like there is more to the culture. So what is the show structure like? What are the episodes about, and how was the public reception once it was launched?
It's a travel show. So we travel to 4 different cities in Canada, mostly in Western Canada. The show is hosted by the enigma that she is, Shiva Reddy. Shiva Reddy is a food and wine expert in Vancouver. And the running thread of the show is her and her relationship with her mom. So her mom was diagnosed with dementia, unfortunately, a few years ago.
Yeah.
And the premise of this show is such that what she's losing to her mom's memories
Yeah.
is what she is trying to piece together through her travels to Indian farms and homes across Canada. So that's like the basic premise of the show. Always wanted to work on the idea of memory because it's interesting how a lot many times as immigrants we rely on our memories, our nostalgia, everything comes from our memories,
Yeah.
how we did things back then, how
Yeah.
we experienced joy back then, and we try to recreate that in one way or the other in our new home, in our new country.
Yeah.
And I think there is an interesting way to look at those memories in a way of how can these memories become the foundation of our new life here and not just stay as memories. So that's why the show weaves other immigrant stories
Yeah.
through the story and memories of this mother-daughter relationship. So that's what
Right.
the basic show is. It's very emotional. It will make you laugh, cry. It will make you feel hungry a lot because it's not a food show, but there's so much food into it.
Yeah.
Because the show does talk about some of the things about our diaspora, about where we come from, or our people here that are generally not talked about. We talk about women
Yeah.
and migration. We never see anyone talking about what happens to women who just follow their husbands here,
Yeah.
trying to make their husband's dream come true. So we always talk about that guy who came with $50 in his pocket and made an empire here. But who was working in the back? The woman, right? So
Yeah.
the show highlights these issues, some of the hard facts of our culture, of our community, but told through food. So
Yeah. When it was launched, how was the audience reaction?
it's been going great. Actually, it recently has launched on CBC Gem, which is like a national broadcaster.
Yeah.
And the response has been amazing. A lot of the times people have cried a lot because it makes them really emotional.
Yeah.
And as a television person, I see that as a win for the show. Not
Sure.
that I'm gaining some sadistic pleasure from people crying,
Right.
but I'm just saying
Yeah.
that it is touching them somewhere and
Yeah.
it's resonating with them. So
Yeah.
I'm happy about that. So I'm getting so many long emails of people who are just saying that they feel seen. They feel like
Yeah.
their stories are being reflected on the screen, which
Yeah.
is very rare on Canadian television.
Sure.
So I'm happy that I am paving this path right now and building on so many other people who have paved this path before,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we are all doing this together and I'm happy
Yeah.
about that.
That's brilliant. That segues perfectly into my next question. That do you feel there is a shortage of Indian or South Asian diaspora focused content in mainstream Canadian media? Because I see now like more and more brands have South Asian specific ads. Like if you see TD Bank, they'll have Happy Diwali ad or whatever. But how I think Kim's Convenience brought the Korean diaspora to the forefront. Do you think there is scope and there's a need for something that brings the Indian diaspora? It's the fastest growing diaspora in Canada, if I'm not mistaken.
I think I want to answer this question very carefully because as much as I say that, there are so many shows right now. There's Allegiance happening. There's Late Bloomer that has been doing really well. There is Bollywood show that is doing so well, which captures South Asian diaspora and our stories in the mainstream media. So it's happening, but it's not enough. I would say that there needs to be more of that.
Yeah.
At the same time, I also want to go beyond the same kind of a narration.
Yeah.
And I want to see what are the other stories that can come out in the mainstream media. Like I remember having this conversation when I was making my show. I wanted to know whether I should say South Asian people or should I say Indian people?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to speak for Nepalese, Bangladeshis, Sri
Sure.
Lankans, Afghanis, Pakistanis. I don't want to speak Bhutanese people. I want to speak about my story.
Yeah.
So I really see that there is this space for stories that are beyond the Indian diaspora,
Sure.
which definitely need a space in the mainstream media.
Yeah.
And I hope that one day we will have that. Yeah. So.
Nice. My last question for you is, what advice do you have for new immigrants from any country who are interested in this media space? What's a good way to get a foot in the door when they're new in the country?
Hustle hard. There's no
Yeah.
alternative for hustle, hard work. But also, I feel like a lot of the times I see this in new immigrants or the immigrants who I have seen, and I've seen a lot of immigrants and interacted with them, that they don't know or try to learn the local history. I think assimilation starts and ends at buying a membership with Costco. I think there needs to be more on our
100%.
part that needs to be done in terms of, try and learn the history of Canada. If you're coming to Canada, if you're coming to USA, try and learn the history of USA. And then I think a lot of the people do not know what has been the injustice done to Indigenous people in Canada.
Yeah.
They're so oblivious because they
Yeah.
think that they don't know, they shouldn't care. Of
Sure.
course, you should care. And
Yeah.
I think that there is this sort of, escaping
Yeah.
what is around us
Yeah.
because you only are so focused about yourself and how you and your family can have the North American dream. And of
Sure.
course, this is all a privilege. I'm saying that being able to go beyond yourself and learn what is around you
Yeah.
is a privilege. And those who can afford to do that, I think they should do it
Yeah.
because it just makes you a richer person in terms of
Absolutely.
having a political, social perspective towards the place that you live in. I mean,
Absolutely.
how can you just be oblivious? Because I think we come from a place where we are so tired of the politics around you. So there is this kind of, I would say that it's a forced amnesia. You don't want
Sure.
to remember it, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like we bring that here with us in our suitcases. So
Yeah.
I feel like we need to open our suitcases and bring in more
Yeah.
of those local experiences,
Yeah.
interaction, listen, learn. And
Absolutely.
that will make you a better person,
I mean,
if
yeah.
not a better immigrant. I don't
It
know.
could be as simple as going for a hockey game, but just trying
Yeah.
everything that the country has to offer. Well, let's do a weekly segment real quick. Can we spin the wheel, please? So, very apt one. This one is called Ma Ka Khana, which means mother's food in Hindi. Do you have a favorite food that you absolutely must have, whether, when you go home, whether it is at home or it is somewhere around you in your neighborhood?
I don't know. I think people ask me this, where is the best Indian food? And I say it's in my kitchen. So,
Yeah.
so I like cooking now. So maybe at home. Yeah.
Yeah.
My-
Any particular dish that
I
that's
like pohe.
special? Oh,
Pohe.
this-
Yeah. Yeah.
the Marathi style pohe.
Yes, the Marathi style pohe. And I think I do a good job of
Yeah.
that. Even my
So-
mom loves my pohe. So
Yeah. So
that-
for our listeners, that's puffed rice flakes with spices. I'm going to post the recipe in the show notes.
Please.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you for listening to Diaspora. We hope you enjoyed hearing Priyanka's fantastic story. Remember to check out our show notes for links and more information about the topics we discussed today. Diaspora is part of the Staying Power network of shows and podcasts, all of which are dedicated to inspiring listeners to build lives of meaning, connection, and value. You can find the Staying Power network of shows, including Diaspora, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. We'll be back next week with another interesting story from the South Asian diaspora. Until then, take care and stay curious. And Priyanka, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.